A tough-talking police minister, warning residents at the local stadium that police will not tolerate violence. His visit comes after weeks of ongoing violent protests in the area, which forced schools and local businesses to close. Residents have called for the release of community leader Ngobani Nzongana, who was arrested last week.
The biggest problem is service delivery. So everything that's happening here is a build-up from that. So everything that's wrong here is service delivery. The municipality here is not treating people equally. In fact, our community here is discarded. We're not known. It's like there's no community called Zwelihle here.
On Thursday, a police officer was axed and 2 members of the public order policing unit also attacked. Their firearms were stolen, but 2 of them have since been recovered. The officer is recovering in hospital. Cele says police will not rest until calm is restored and the remaining stolen firearm recovered.
Nobody will be a prisoner in the township. People must be allowed to get out and get in. So that's one thing that we need even to do before the meeting happens. That's why we are saying police cannot be withdrawn, because whoever breaks the law, whoever forces people to do things that they don't want to do, the police must maintain and enforce the law.
Earlier, during a separate stakeholder meeting in the council building, Cele said a police base camp would be established in Zwelihle.
The teams that we have brought a premier here, we don't even issue them with rubber bullets. By law, we don't issue them with rubber bullets. There are teams that we issue them with rubber bullets. But when you bring TRUT and NNU, know that they don't have a rubber bullet.
Provincial leaders were also invited to the meeting. They've been asking for the army to be deployed to maintain law and order in crime-ridden communities.
They are very clever because they don't come into the front and actually do it. They command their people from the back. And it's often the foot soldiers who have been coerced into doing these things, who are the people who actually do these things. But we now have to get together and find ways within a constitutional democracy that is governed by the rule of law to get enough evidence to court to convict those people and to send them to jail for a long time.
Cele has commended police for exercising extreme restraint in the face of violent provocation. At least 60 people have been arrested since the protest started. Vanessa Puna, SABC News, Hermanus.
Well, Police Minister Bheki Cele has committed to increase the number of police officers to stabilise the situation at Zwelihle township in Hermanus in the Western Cape. He says that they will have another meeting with the leaders of the township next week. Well, this follows an earlier meeting with the community at the local stadium today. Cele told residents that the police will ensure law and order in the area. Cele also met briefly with community leaders. Overnight, 2 members of the police's public order unit were wounded and robbed of their firearms during violent protests in the area. Well, since the start of the violent protest last week, more than 60 people have been arrested. For more on this story, we are now joined by Andy Mashaile, advisor of the National Police Community Forum Board and ambassador for Interpol. Very good evening, sir. We thank you very much for your time.
Good evening to you.
Essentially, an update on those 2 officers. Can you give us any details around that?
We know that those 2 officers have received and are receiving, continue to receive medical attention and all other things. I have been led to believe that the police are on the hunt for those who took the firearms.
Yeah. Essentially, it seems as though criminals and community members, when we see these community riots taking place, they seem to not fear the police. They seem to not understand the authority that South Africa policing units have. Why is this?
Let's point the fingers at the right place. When youngsters grow up in our communities and they want a lollipop at a supermarket or any other place, we normally say we will call the police in on you. When they grow up with that program of loathing the police. When they grow up to become young men who can throw stones and who can bend tires in the middle of the road, when they see a police officer, it does not shake them an inch on the inside to respect law and order. But I am happy that the Minister, the National Commission and the police management at national level and at all provinces have made it very clear that law and order will prevail, like it or not.
Yeah, let's look around protection of actually police when they go out on the ground. Previously in the past, they've been criticized on their force that they've used specifically during community protests and riots that have been taking place. In terms of this incident and previous calls from policing units and wanting more security when they do handle community protests and events such as this, what has their response been to two of their own being wounded?
It is disturbing, it is hurting, it is restraining to those members who are on the ground when they execute their duties, when they have no one to protect them, when they are at the mercy of law and order themselves in terms of firing back to defend themselves and to take the right position as far as life and limb of the members is concerned.
In terms of policing units going forward and the structures, what essentially can be revised? There do seem to be loopholes, specifically the policing units when it comes to crowd control, when it comes to calming situations when they do turn violent, such as your community protests.
The training of the police, particularly your public order policing units, is excellent. What happens at the training college and what happens on the ground is completely two different things in terms of response time, in terms of guarding against things like your Human Rights Commission, who would raise issues and raise the ire when the police defend themselves, and we have seen on a number of cases where police have been arrested for defending themselves and for defending the property of other community members.
It seems as though, the current structures that are in place, specifically when it comes to controlling community rights, don't seem to be working. There seems to be some sort of a mishap, or there seems to be some sort of a missing link. Where do we think that these structures can be revised and improved and made better?
I think there should be a partnership, a better partnership between the communities and the police. One, there should be a better relationship between your public order policing and members of the community, particularly the leadership. That impacts on the service delivery value chain. What we have seen up to so far is that value chain from a policing side being a little bit lag because of the absence of community members, community leaders forming part and parcel of community-oriented policing that is based on law, the rule of law and order.
Yeah. Now, going back to force that is used within the community, let's go to an example that happened just this week. A couple of marchers from political party marched to flats in Nyanga, also then calling on Police Minister Bheki Cele to deploy the army to come and bring peace and to quell gangsterism in the area. Is that an option?
I know that me and you know that the army is not well trained to do policing. We know that the mandate of the army is completely different from that of policing. We, however, know that the army can be converted or can be led by policing officers on the ground. But we, members of the community and civilians, know that in other provinces and in other areas where there has been service delivery protest, and like my own home community in Bekkersdal, we have seen police stabilize the violence hotspot as a violence hotspot and also normalize that area. I go back home to my own mother to a normalized community after very violent service delivery protest in Bekkersdal, if you can remember, some few years back. So it is against that backdrop that we all have a responsibility to make sure that stabilization and normalization of violent service delivery protest is informed by all in the value chain of community policing.
Lastly, just very quickly, but does that not then send signals to the policing units that members of the public would rather call on or are calling on the army to come and reinforce some sort of calm rather than trusting the police, which is their mandate?
Perception out there becomes fact. When you sit and as I was the chairperson of the Provincial Police Board, when you sit with your provincial management as well as national management and you engage in issues and you ask questions, you realize that there are plans that have been executed on the ground. The fact of the matter would be communication going out into communities, communication spreading through leadership of our communities, also creates a perception that there wouldn't be any stability in terms of the police taking control of situations. But we can tell you, on behalf of those communities that we lead, we know we have worked with the police for the past 7 years. We are satisfied that the police have what it takes to make the difference. The only issue is we need to work hand in glove with our police. There can't be any effective service delivery policing when members of the community do not form part of that value chain.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your time this evening, Mr. Andy Mashaile, advisor of the National Police Community Forum Board and ambassador for Interpol, to talk about some of those violent unrest that we've seen in community and also calling for interference there of Police Minister Mr. Bheki Cele. Now over to Francis.